Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which is sold to Salesforce for 1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, one of the first generative AI companies that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. Today, GSD has 180 companies in our portfolio, representing 73 countries around the world. And today on Top Global Startups, I'm thrilled to welcome Joe Gagnon, CEO and co-founder of Raynmaker.ai, a groundbreaking platform that's transforming how businesses manage their sales and marketing. Joe's no stranger, and he's had bold challenges. He's a six-time CEO, high-performance coach, and ultra-endurance athlete who run 100-mile races and completed 6 marathons and 6 continents in 6 days. He's also the author of the upcoming book, Living Intentionally, which distills lessons for 4,500 plus days of daily reflection into roadmap for resilience, purpose, and growth. At Rainmaker, Joe and his team are building the AI-enabled sales engine of the future, one that combines intelligent automation with a human touch to help small businesses scale smarter, faster, and more intentionally. Today, we're going to dive into the story behind Rainmaker and Joe's story and how AI is reshaping the sales funnel and hear Joe's perspective of leadership, performance, and living intentionally. With that, I'd like to bring Joe on board.
Thanks, Gary. What a fun introduction that was. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no problem. Hey, Joe, I got a question for you. You do all this, you do a lot you run and do all this. But I just have a question for you. One of the things that I've done is I've had 2 full body stem cell replacements.
Mm.
So I've had mesenchymal stem cells, 100 million stem cells, like Brian Johnson, put into my body. And it's profoundly impacted my ability to be able to do the kind of things that you're doing, right? So
Mm.
I can ride a bike 90 miles. I can do a lot of things that I could never do before. But the other thing is, uh, you know, it's interesting because when you're running, I mean, you have that experience endorphins and enkephalons, but when you do these stem cells, it turns the clock back.
Mm.
And have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about those kind of technologies like mesenchymal stem cells?
I think about it all the time because uh, I actually followed Brian and his endeavor to sort of think about, sort of reversing the clock, so to speak. I've been on a slightly different path, not because it's better. It's just mine has been through this living daily activity kind of life, so the 57,000 miles of running and the 100,000 miles on a bike and the nearly 1,000,000 push-ups that I've done, and probably 2 or 300,000 pull-ups, that I am stimulating similar systems that, like, it would probably still be better for me if I could change out my stem cells and improve sort of some of the wiring, so to speak.
Yeah, because
But
what they do is these blank stem cells go in and replace the stem cells that have aged.
mm,
And so where there's tear from bicycling or jogging, it goes in and actually repairs them. So they're blank mesenchymal. They're from an umbilical cord, right? And not yours. They're actually live. So somebody gives birth, and within 3 hours, you're actually getting those stem cells. The reason I'm saying that is because on one side you're pounding your body because I mean you're working it hard, right? On the other side is you're not repairing it.
mm,
This stuff repairs it. It's very interesting. I've seen world class athletes. I'm one of 7,000 and have had these kind of stem cells done, but I've seen world class athletes and come in to get those treatments because of that. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? On the outside, you know how you feel, but on the inside, things could be dramatically different.
oh, I completely agree and understand. And I think, like, I am a science experiment in a sense as well, given sort of the volume and the method and the approach I've taken to living. It would be fun to do more and lean in even harder to, like everyone uses the language of biohacking. So there's a couple ways of thinking
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's biohacking, but it's just this is like it's infobesity, right? You can go out. This stuff exists, right? I built a cancer vaccine last year because I know how to use. So, by the way, I have 14 large language models that actually exactly what I just told you about
Hmm.
production. It's listening to our conversation and it's coming up with questions to ask you on the fly. It's my think tank, and
I love that. That's amazing.
and it told me to talk to you about the stem cells because said you're probably interested, and so
Yeah.
talk about your
Oh
stem cells.
no. Yeah. I like to consume a lot of content that is on the fringe because I've sort of lived there myself for 25 years, and it's working because I certainly feel better than anyone in our age group would. Typically with certainly not sitting on the couch.
Now, how old are you? How old are you, Joe?
64.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, like just this past December, I did 2,000 pull-ups in 11 hours and 40 minutes. And, uh, I'm going to go for my 24-hour process coming up soon. I ran the Badwater 135 miles through Death Valley back in July. And then like you, Gary, although I don't have the creds that you do, but, done 6 startups, all of them after I was 40 years old.
Mhm.
Where I'm not the typical 23-year-old Y Combinator person. I'm more of this, deep tech business process improvement, try and make change happen through technology, and also how I show up both personally and professionally on this journey. And I would just have to say that I feel like I found my own version of the lottery ticket, and how I live. It's been pretty exciting. But, let's
When
hope
did you start running and everything? When did you start doing that, Joe?
39 years old. I had been a partner at Ernst & Young for many years, and, in the proverbial sense, was sort of falling apart. It looked like I was fine. I was making a lot of money. I had the fancy car and the house in the country club, but inside I didn't feel very good. I couldn't run a mile or do a push-up. I had sort of lost my sense of humor. I had almost sort of missed the purpose of life. And so I started writing in a spreadsheet every day what I was doing to try and build some accountability into, an improvement model. And Gary, I always thought this like, we create this antagonism through false choices. Oh, you can't do this and that, and I decided I should be able to do it all. I should be able to have a family life and a professional life and a personal life and an athletic life and, be an entrepreneur and uh, be a writer and an author, and all of that was able to happen by that, ultimately what came together in this book called Living Intentionally, which is somewhat a methodology connecting to your purpose that says that if you have the proper sort of infrastructure in your life, we call them life pillars, if you can master reflection and understand what's going on a daily basis and embrace discomfort, the magic happens. And so it's been a magical 25 years, honestly.
You go down through it and you can do anything you want. I'm 68, so
Hmm.
I've gone down through the process myself, and I had stage 3 kidney disease. I had mesenchymal because of ibuprofen, because of judo, right? I had been in judo and I hurt myself, and I would take ibuprofen. I didn't understand the impact it would have, and I couldn't sleep. Like, quite frankly, I didn't want to have an operation. I couldn't sleep. And the day I found out about it, I actually took my 14 agent large language model, multi agent large language model. I had built a cancer vaccine for my dog prior to that in August using the language model. My dog had stage 4 cancer, and I actually put the model on top of it. I said, I don't know what to do. I love my dog. It was my dad's dog,
Hmm.
and she's my dad's dog. And I put the language model on it, and we built at a molecular level a vaccine. It told me where to have it done, what I needed to do, and we actually had it built. And within 3 weeks of starting the project, I actually was injecting. We had the vaccine given to the dog, and put her in complete remission of stage 4 cancer. In
Hmm.
fact, on if you look on LinkedIn, you'll actually see her swimming after that. And I
Yeah.
was profoundly impacted because what I understood is that there's things out there that I don't know. And
Mhm.
I've been in AI 29 years. I've been in tech 44 years in the Valley. What if we started applying this and giving yourself superpowers, right,
Yeah.
to figure this stuff out? So what happened is when I had my stage 3 kidney disease, the same deal. I put it on myself and it said, well, the only way to do it is mesenchymal stem cells because they'll go in and replace the damaged parts of your kidney and help. So I did it, and within a week, my stage 3 kidney disease was gone after I
Amazing.
did stem cell replacement, and it wasn't hard at all. I had to go. You can't do it in the U.S. because there's rules around it that were influenced. Some religious groups influenced Congress and changed the rules during the Bush administration. But I did it, and I couldn't believe it. All the wrinkles went out of my face. Everything started changing, and then I started. I can ride a bike 90 miles now. I can go
Amazing.
out myself and ride. And I just did it recently, and I do every day. I ride 25 miles minimum, and generally 50.
That's great. And don't you think it's like a little bit of, if you're a programmer, you fix the bugs, then your programs and you make it run better. And humans, we got a lot of bugs in us and we're trying to figure out, but we're probably not using enough sort of the same mindset. And so instead of like, you can ignore the bug when it pops up on your screen, you close the window. And sometimes we do that. That's what an Advil will do. It keeps us from actually understanding what's really going on. And so that if we can get to the root cause of some of these issues, it's just a programming problem.
But the problem is, Joe, like I had sciatica, right? I went into the doctor. They wanted to do an operation on my back. When I got my full body stem cell replacement done, it went into my sciatica and fixed it. You know what I mean? It's completely gone.
Right.
My neck, I had problem with a bulging neck because of my, I have 2 black belts, and I would, horse around a lot and judo compete, and I had it hurt. It's gone.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the pain, I didn't realize some of this stuff would happen. What I didn't realize is the wrinkles in your face and, and your biological age drops back a lot. And so what happened with me is I started saying, no matter what we do, we still get older. So what if we actually replace those cells with these mesenchymal stem cells? So, put 100 million in a couple of times, what happens? Well, everything changes.
Yeah.
Your energy level goes up, your mentality changes, your ability to cope with stress. I mean, I'm sure at 39, with a house and country club and all that, you had a lot of stress, especially being a partner in one of those companies. There's a lot of political BS that goes on that you got to deal with. But when you start doing these biohacking things like I've done, there's only 200 people that have done 2 full body stem cell replacements.
Wow.
Or, excuse me, 700 people have done that. I'm going for my 3rd one. You don't have to do it 3 times. You only have to do it once. But it changes everything. Your mentality changes, your cognitive capabilities. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I didn't bench it, but I'm thinking 15 to 18%, something like that. It's different. And it changed everything. And then you start combining that. So you build it's like having your car, right? You're putting a rebuilt engine in it. And then you go out and, now you got something to really race. Now you can I couldn't ride 90 miles before.
That's incredible. And look, I think that you're very intentional about it. And I think that that's what, instead of having this sort of default that we just follow the path that the world sort of indicates we should follow, versus designing a life that we want to have, whether it's being an entrepreneur where you've been very successful in both building businesses and actually helping other people in that way. I think when we turn up, as more productive and vital people later in our lives, we can then do more. I feel like, you're probably doing a bunch of coaching. I do coaching, and this is like being supportive, but you can't do that if your energy systems are low and if you're feeling pain all the time. It's hard to show up as good as you would like to. And it's like the entrepreneur in me, I think it's fun that you're still an entrepreneur. I remember a meeting one time where someone said, they don't invest in anyone over 40 years old. And I'm like, I don't know what it is.
I was with Tim Draper yesterday, right? So some people didn't show up because of COVID to speak. So this is a pretty big event at Hero University. And I'm sitting in the audience. And they asked me to come up and speak to go on a panel. And I said, okay, sure, no problem. I go up in the panel, and 2 of the top VCs were there. And they asked me to speak. And I said, okay. And I spoke. And the VC said, the person I invested in is sitting right here. This is the person that I would invest in. And the key is, you change. Well, my biological clock's back 20 years now, right?
Yeah.
So, but having that energy and then the experience on top of that changes things.
Right.
Because, as we get older, the people die and they can't use their full experience level. And once you start doing this biohacking stuff, and I think you're right. I've taken a different approach. You've gone down and done the exercise first. I've gone down and done the stem cells and gone back into the I couldn't exercise before. I was hurt.
Right.
Right. So, and then I see my friends that have, that jog or bike or do these things, and they end up pulling something, and they end up can't do it anymore, and they end up getting fat and lazy.
Yeah, I haven't let that happen yet. And I think it actually, though, it's very integrated. Like I think of the integrated life, not the balanced life, because I think balance actually puts you into survival, not thriving. Integration is where we do our best. So it isn't a day that I either work or exercise or I read or I write. This is my life every day. It's integrated. All these activities are stimulating. Look, this system that you and I run, this human system, it thrives when you use it, right? The more you use it,
if you don't use it, you lose it.
That's right. And so that's what I figured out. And I love the idea now playing around the AI space because, for the first time, I think that our full creativity can actually come out. Before it was, you could be creative, but there were constraints. You can't actually do that because resources aren't available. You don't have as much brain power, or there's not enough access to information or computer, whatever it is. But in this AI space, especially, we're trying to work on some really novel ideas. It's the creativity that you bring to it. It's almost a little bit like, what if? I wonder if I could do that. It's this deep level of curiosity that seems to have no bounds right now. And the more that I've leaned into life and thought about, oh, wow, I wonder if that would work, the more that I've learned. And that's both on the physical side, the mental side, the emotional side. And otherwise you get stuck. And this is why people don't really create differentiated value in the companies they create or in their own personal life, because they're running the same play again and again. What does that do? Like at some point, there's only so much improvement you can get.
Yeah, no, I agree. So my AI is listening to our conversation right now, and it just said to me, ask Joe, you've run 100-mile races and marathons on 6 continents in 6 days. How do lessons from endurance points translated in your leadership at Raynmaker? How's it changed it and morphed it?
Yeah, I think that the first part always was this idea that it's a little bit about a touch on, like, I want to know what it's going to be like. That's why I go out and want to experience these, crazy races. And with a startup or a new company, you got to sort of lean into this curiosity first. So once you lean into the curiosity, and that opens up your mind and your heart. The second is embracing discomfort. Mm-hmm. And to run 6 marathons, 6 continents, 6 days, it's going to be discomfort. But
now, was that hard? Was that hard, Joe?
Not really.
No,
I don't know. Maybe it was the framing. Maybe it was my training. It was a solid week. I ran 157 miles. I flew 37,000 miles. I slept 14 hours. I didn't lay down all week. I went from continent to continent.
You didn't lay down all week? You didn't sleep?
I wasn't coach on the planes, the overnight planes. I did not get in a lay flat seat. I always tell people I used the airplane bathrooms to brush my teeth and wash my face, and that's what I had. And so I think the framing, and it's the same thing with entrepreneurship and building this company. It's like, I embrace the discomfort because it's the pathway to growth. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, then none of this is afraid. You don't get afraid of anything. You're like, okay, let's go do that. And when you do that, then everyone else sort of lines up with you. They want to, like, okay, I'm not afraid.
Because they know you can tackle the fear. I had lunch with Scott McNeely. He was one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. Yeah. Actually, very close to where I am right now in Palo Alto. And he told me, always go to areas you fear the most, you're going to learn the most. And I remember, I'd gone through a divorce, and, somebody said to me, hey, listen, you're 46 years old, you're going through a divorce. What do you want to do? And I said, well, my ex-wife ended up becoming a doctor of pharmacy. And I said, what would you want to do? And I said, I want to go back to school. And so I actually went back to school in Russia and lived in a student dorm 5 years.
Wow.
Now 46. Now that turns the clock back too, by the way. So because you're with young people, 18, 22, 23, and you start to change because mentally you start reorienting yourself back. So you can do anything. He told me, always go to area you fear the most, you're going to learn the most. And it's true, but most people never do it because as you get older, they start wanting to reduce risk.
Yeah, I think that, risk is about probability. I like high probability, low probability. I actually just want to experience life. When we started this company, Rainmaker, I wrote a manifesto because I wanted to have a common set of beliefs about what we are going to go do. Then I wrote a constitution, which is the value system that we're going to use and the responsibility we have in building this platform. And most people don't step back and do that, but what it does is it energizes us, it aligns us. I wrote the book Living Intentionally. I write every day, I run every day, I solve problems every day. And with all of that, like when you sort of wonder like why some people have high energy, it's because this is what we're meant to do. It's a little bit like you leave your F1 car in the garage. What's the purpose of having $1 million car if it doesn't do anything?
I talk about that. I've written articles about putting a Ferrari in the garage, and I say most people, my friend, I'll tell you a real story. So my friend down in Palm Beach, so we were out to dinner, and I said, "What kind of car you have?" He was showing me his Ferraris. He had two Ferraris, and he had them like encased in his garage, like in plexiglass, kind of like that was that level. And I'm like, okay, it was one of them was an Enzo Ferrari. So he said to me, "What do you have?" And I told him the car I have. And he said, "What do you do with it?" I said, "Well, I got it out here. I drove it. I drive my car, right?" And I said, "Well, why don't you drive yours?" He said, "Oh no, they're like art." I said, "How much have you driven them?" He said, "Less than 25 miles." I said, 25 miles? Like seriously? Yeah. Yeah. So I see him about 3 months later, same restaurant, and he's got his head in his hands. And I said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I'm getting divorced." And I said, "Well, that's really bad, man." And he said, "And my wife wants my cars." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that is so crazy, you know?" And so, um, yeah, it's just you got to live it. You got to get it out of the garage. And if you don't, you never know your full potential. You
No.
don't know whether it's, like you've done, and it's incredible going across 6 continents, running like that, being 64 years old, or just stretching everything, your mind, right? And learn things. You're right. It's learning every day. And by the way, if you use these multi-agent LLMs, you can answer any question and you start to learn faster.
And back to my point, which is like this is the moment where all of us can actually lean into whatever the inspiration is that we have. And there are really no good constraints that we could blame, and I think often that is, this resistance, like back to my sixth content thing. When I started, I wrote this note, the lows would be the highs, that if you can define life through that lens, meaning that you are excited by the difficulty, then the difficulty never
Well,
happens.
that's it. You got to people say to me the same thing, right? Why are you so positive about things? Because if you get negative, then shit, then it's bad. You know what I mean? If you stay positive about it, when people said to me, they laughed at me, my friends, right? When I went back to school at 46 and I'm living in a student dorm, they laughed at me, Joe. They were like seriously, like degrading. But then they saw my girlfriends the girls that I was dating, and they're like, "Oh, wow, I want to go back to school." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, dude, it's a matter of opinion. If
Right.
you take what you get into your circumstances and keep a positive attitude, positive things happen. It's
Oh,
you can actually will it into existence. As a man thinketh, or The Secret, or as a psychologist, a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become what you say you are. And
that's
if
right.
you want to run, you run. If you want to be a mechanic, you be a mechanic. But most people never do it. It's amazing. They never realize their potential, and they stay in a little box their whole life, right? They never go out and explore. I didn't think I went to Russia. Can you imagine living in
That's
going to
pretty
back to school in Russia for 5 years? Seriously, at 46, it was like, but I did it. Then I became an MBA professor. Then I started the first generative AI company in
That's amazing.
2016, pre-transformer models. I got David Yang. I had brought Guy Kawasaki to Russia, and David had seen me over there. David immigrated to the U.S. He's a billionaire,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, here we did it, right? So you can do anything you want. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So so my AI is saying to me, it wants to know where do you see the future of AI powered sales heading in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. So, if you thought about autonomous driving level 1 through 5, right? One day we'll take the steering wheel out of the car. We have a similar model in sales, which is that one day we won't need a person in the middle of the sale, because the truth of the matter is that we've been able to architect the elements of what would go on in a dialogue of a sale, from sort of scoring leads to qualifying leads to having the conversation, making the offer, taking the payment, scheduling the appointment, and then doing the follow-up. So I think certainly in the next 3 years, you'll see full autonomy. We will have, by the end of this year, a happy path autonomous selling process for small business, so that you will not have to call a call center, fill out a lead form, have someone follow up with you. You'll actually be able to real time do speed to lead in a second, push a button and talk and engage with the AI. And so that AI will be domain specific. It will be, actually personality specific to the brand, and it'll be able to do, let's say, the selling where you could package an offer, where you have to go and do an estimate. Maybe a plumber has to do an estimate. It's hard to close a deal particularly, but we can schedule the appointment. So we see AI as this enabler, or freeing up the small business owner to actually get to the American dream, which is to have a business that doesn't overwhelm your life, which is predictable and costs less, and then is actually productive in your financial life. And so, but selling isn't what they ever set out to do. They want to deliver the service, take care of their customers. And so for us, we want to take out the hard part of the business, which is taking those leads and converting them at a reasonable cost so you get a good return. So AI is integral to it. All this stuff. We're building a RAG so that we can do the augmented generation to the conversation. We have the workflow, which is the sales process. And then we have the brand specific content. And then lastly, all the best practices we have from years of knowing how to sell. And so that all comes together in this magical experience that the consumer will have when they call up and say, I want my house cleaned. And some AI is talking to them about how they can do that for $200 a month. And they'll say,
I want to go to that person because it costs me a whole lot more than that.
Amen. But, the idea is that, let's go to highest and best use of what the owner in a small business should be doing. And so we actually think that we took the hardest path is small and medium business, not enterprise. But if we can prove it works there, you can sort of just stick any kind of content into that kind of conversation. And, so customer service, for example, will be part of the platform because the consumer doesn't think differently about someone selling or someone supporting them. And then ultimately, what we believe in the nurturing process in leads and lead generation today is rather clumsy. It can be very customized and conversational. At the end of the day, if you want to buy something, a service or a product for your home, you know what you want, but you can't find the information and you can't find anyone who's typically that helpful. And you know this, Gary. Look how your AI is sitting there right next to you. Imagine if this AI became more of your partner than your influencer, where you call a salesperson, it feels like they just want to close you rather than help you. We want to be more helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we put, I'm a clinical psychologist, humanistic too. And one of the things I put is empathy and compassion in the model, kind of like my grandmother. And it's changed things for me. Actually, it knows how I think. I actually created my own digital twin too.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Anyhow, it said to me, so it wants me to say, for small business owners listening who might feel overwhelmed, what's one step they can take today to prepare for AI in sales?
I think that simplifying their offer so that it's easy for a platform to be able to make that sale offer to the consumer. Don't make it too complicated. That's probably the simplest thing they could do.
Interesting. And where can more people learn more about Raynmaker and your work and grab a copy of Living Intentionally?
Yeah, readiness.ai. So we're, on the web there, of course, on LinkedIn. And then I'm on Amazon. You can buy the book. Just search for Joe Gagnon, Gagnon, Living Intentionally. I've got quite a few nice reviews, so you probably could all read those and then buy a copy and have your sort of plan for how to live like Gary and I get to do.
So finally, Joe, if you had to sum up your mission, now this is my AI saying this, right? In one sentence, what would it be?
Yeah, I build myself to build others.
That's great. If you want to stay on after the show, we can talk for a few minutes. To all my audience out there, thank you for joining one more time. We're closing in on 1,500 podcasts,
Wow.
almost closing in on 2 million views. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. We'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. And everybody out there, have a great week and enjoy yourselves and be happy.
Thanks, Gary.